If we had to sum it up in one word, what is the problem? Why do we assume there's a problem? Well, there you go. There you go, Anakin. Well, to me, this was a pretty disappointing chapter in the Scream series. And having watched all the films and being a big Wes Craven fan, yeah, it's safe to say we've moved very far away from Russ. So, was this garbage? No. It was a very nice, stylish thriller. It does have a lot of plot holes, a lot of leaps you have to make with the logic of the story, as it were. So what are we getting? Well, on the good end of it, it is a pretty solid performance by Nev. However, at certain points, which we now have to confront the elephant in the room, is that there were really only two choices they had, in my mind. They either make Sydney really strong or really weak. So I'm okay with making them much stronger than they should be, both the mother and daughter. That's fine, because if they went the opposite route, that would be a little frustrating, and that's been copied too many times, right? The hero is PTSD and the trauma is too much. So I didn't mind her being strong. However, we're granting both Sydney and the daughter are strong. They make too many puzzling, stupid decisions, so that was frustrating. So let me just lay out the basic plot. But it doesn't really matter because they start turning things into spaghetti. So Sydney has moved to a new town, a kind of remote little town in Indiana. She runs a coffee shop. And I'd have to say, for the first 30 to 35 minutes, it goes fast. I was shocked how fast it went. A lot of people were complaining the first kill is overly stylized. It took too much time. I think that's fine. They showed that these Ghostface, there's more than one, you have to spoil that, are pretty powerful and they're pretty malevolent. So I'm fine with that. However, once we got started on the main story, things started to go a little bit too fast, especially the confrontation with Sydney and AI Stu, which was well done and set up a lot of the story. However, it wasn't that conversation, but what happens afterwards created to me a big domino effect that the film never quite grasped or was able to handle. And again, this is no spoiler review, so I got to be a little vague. But I will say, and it sounds odd to say this, and some reviews noted this, but I really emphasize this. It was a really funny film, at least for the first half. I mean, it is filled with a lot of jokes. Now, a lot of jokes are bad, but I was surprisingly laughing a lot. And then when they try to switch gears, things start to fall apart. I do think Isabel is definitely trying, but the script is really schizophrenic because at certain points she understands Sydney and why she's not giving more details about her past. In fact, they even do this lampshade. Again, it's no spoiler, but Sydney literally says, I mean, there's movies, there's Stab. Okay, so they're acknowledging, they're not retconning, Stab exists, they're a Stab, but she's still acting pretty stupid and unreasonable, so that was frustrating. And the problem is, there are also just both minor and major editing mistakes. Like, for instance, we'll just say, for one of the kills, which makes sense, Sydney has a gun, she pulls out her gun, and I swear to you, a few seconds later, that gun is gone. It just disappeared. So there seem to be some mismatches with the different reshoots and different versions. But again, I don't want to be too negative because there are good things. Like, some of the kills are done very stylistically well. The camera's handled very confidently and fluidly. It's not Wes Craven, right? So it's not even like Scream 3, I think, is one of the most stylized ones, and that's really well done. It's not at that level, but it's still pretty good. So what's the problem? Well, it's when they have to reveal more about the Ghostface, the plan, the conspiracy, things start to be like, you're going to guess work too much of the plot way ahead of time. I'm sure some people will be fooled, but I think a lot of the audience will be like, I know who it is. So the only thing left is what is motivating these killers. And when they reveal the whole thing, you're like, that was really childish. And again, I want to stick to the story, not get into the production or the politics, but I do have to note they paid like $500,000 for the rewrites. And I'm like, what did you pay for? Because it still seemed way too juvenile, and they're pulling things from Scream 2, Scream 3, even Scream 4 about the obsessed fans, the toxic fandom. This thing has been done to death already, and it doesn't really add anything new. It just creates more puzzles and questions like, wait, how did you do this? Where was that person? Those are not really answered. And this is a very small town, but miraculously, Ghostface keeps managing to strike when the police are not around, and also the targets keep lining up in a certain way. I will say, though, that the trailers are misleading, so things I complained about in the videos where I went over the leaks, that's not really what happened. There are reasons that Ghostface is more murderous in some parts, and other parts not murderous, because it's not necessarily Ghostface who did the killing. Again, I'm going to leave it vague. Okay, so that's fine, but the characters are just way too thin. So the main characters we're familiar with have not really progressed too much. I mean, it's just very superficial, right? The twins are working with Gail. They want careers in journalism. Okay, I mean, they look good. I mean, again, this thing looks good in many ways. The music is really strong. The callbacks are there, but it just feels like they're stitching little bits and pieces of Scream 1, Scream 2, and surveying the other ones. They're avoiding, of course, Scream 6, like the plague. They do acknowledge it. They're saying, wow, that was really violent in New York. Okay, what happened? Well, can't talk about it. So that's what it feels like. We're getting the greatest hits, which is fine up to a point, but when it comes time to make their own movie, it's like, aside from very vapid, AI is dangerous, which is true. Theme, they don't have much. Even the things where they're parodying or referencing the other horror movies, I'm glad they did it, like Halloween. It could be done stronger. And some of the dialogue is just, even for Scream, was like, huh? So at one point, like, one of the Ghostface is killed, and Sydney's like, there's always one more. So they're like, okay, I can get to some extent she's not fooled, but then it's like, that feels more like what Randy would say. So it just feels like these characters are too much interchangeability. And again, this is Kevin. These are his characters. He made them. So you'd think he'd be more sensitive. So some of the dialogue between Sydney and the daughter, and I keep calling her the daughter because she's really more like a mythic symbol, which is a shame because at the beginning, it seemed they were going to give her a very distinct, good personality. And she's a good actress. She's very pretty, very energetic, has a very bubbly personality. But then she just becomes very mechanical. That's what it is. She's like very robotic. And her reactions are just like, that doesn't feel right. I mean, this is your boyfriend. These are your friends. These are your new allies. And she's just very confrontational. And you're like, they're trying to save you. Why? Yeah, so things like that just kept getting more and more annoying, that Sydney and the daughter just keep making stupid decisions that allow Ghostface to continue the terror campaign. And the strongest thing here really is Stu. Like, Matthew Lillard is saving this film, but I can't even name the number of scenes because that'd be spoiling things, but for the most part, his scenes are powerful. But, and again, this is AI Stu. It's not real Stu, so that's fine. But some of the dialogue and some of the scenes are just like, it's not he's overacting. It's just that this doesn't feel like Stu. And again, it's not Stu. It's AI Stu, but still, it just feels way too much like forcing the plot to move forward. And that's not how Stu works in the mythology. He is a character with his own needs, his own wants, right? And here it's just dumbed down to, I'm going to get revenge. I'm going to stab you. I'm going to kill you. You're going to... Over and over again. It's just like... So just on that, they should be like, this doesn't sound like Stu at all. Instead, they just could be like, it can't be Stu. Stu is dead. So again, the dialogue just doesn't feel organic to the characters, and it just feels really weird because this is Kevin, so you expected it to be much more sharp and more exact. I mean, good or bad with Scream 5 or 6. Okay, it's different writers, but you have Kevin there. You'd think he'd be like, that doesn't feel right. So the dialogue in only a few places is sharp, funny, and witty, and then it just gets very mechanical, very robotic. That's probably the best word. It just feels way too robotic. It feels like they're taking pieces, not just even from Scream, but from other major thrillers like Halloween and, right, Friday the 13th. You go through the list. And again, that's there. Scream does borrow, but here it's way too blatant. They are just full on copying scenes from the first film. And it's like, it just got tiresome. And by the end, you think they got to bring something in to just really make it more powerful. And instead of just flatlines, it just flatlines at the end. The villains are way too cartoonish. Again, they're just too many times, like certain characters just act like the Riddler. It just does not feel tonally like Scream at all. And again, if you want to do that, bring in the Batman universe, Spider-Man universe, do something crazy like Sam Raimi, Rian Johnson, great, do it. But here it's too tame. and yet it's too experimental at places, so it just feels really wobbly and all over the place. So I've got to give it a fairly low score here at 5.5 at best. And that's a real shame because there was a lot of potential and you could see kind of where they're going, but it seems like this is a good prototype of a movie that could be a lot better. But I have to judge what they gave me, and what they gave me was, above average compared to most films. But in terms of Scream, this is very below average. Is it the worst Scream? It's definitely one of the worst. So, and again, it's kind of a utopia to just see if we can just get back to Scream 1 or 2. We don't have Wes Craven, right? These are facts. We don't have Wes. We don't have the original cast. So we can't just go back to the past. However, you want to find ways to update things smoothly. And here it's too forced. It's too robotic. And again, they can't really address the political issues, which I understand because they're too sensitive, but it feels like too wobbly. The satire is just not sharp enough. So it has good flashy kills. The music is strong. Some dialogue is sharp and really witty and well done, but way too many scenes drag. Way too many scenes are just going on, meandering, and it feels like they haven't not yet decided what exactly are we doing with this film. It has no real large statement aside from AI, and the villains are just very disappointing. So 5.5. Is it worth it? If you have enough money, you're not going to waste your money, but you're going to be like, okay, that was nice. That's fine. It is probably the most forgettable chapter, though, by far, unfortunately.